Thank you. I happen to be the lucky recipient of a big brain. It's called the big brain in the catalog because it's big. It's bigger than our brain. My big brain was a gift from my husband. It came with this stand. There's a plaque on the stand that says, "It's not often you find a passionate friend who's beautiful and has a big brain too." I'm fascinated by the brain, how it learns, how it processes information. So I wonder what you think. What do you think educators know about this fabulous instrument we all have? So I Googled it. What does a traditional curriculum in major in education look like? And I found out that all the courses are related to content, how the future teacher will teach the future subjects to the future students. What you won't find is anything about context, how the brains of those students will actually process all that information. So what happens to the handful of students in every classroom who struggle with this information if the teacher doesn't know how the brain works? So, I'm sorry, I'm nervous. When we think of learning problems, we always think first of auto parts. When this broke in my car, the mechanic said it would cost $2,500 to fix, but the thing that's broken is a 3-cent piece of plastic tubing. Still, I had to buy the whole beast. Likewise, in the classroom, it's a small minority of students who present the big majority of problems. Special ed programs cost 2 to 3 times that of standard programs. If you don't qualify for special ed, you might still need extra reading or a tutor. Even though these students receive all this extra help year after year and the funding that provides it, they still often fail to improve year after year. So, can we question conventions? Do we need to always have expensive and extensive programs? Might there be alternatives? What if by focusing on the actual source of the problem, most likely in the brain, we came up with an inexpensive, quick, and effective intervention to help these students? Someone who did question content-oriented only solutions for learning problems was Dr. Lee Hoffman, my mother. I'm very proud of her, and I'm sure I inherited at least some of my passion for the brain from her because I'm now co-director of her institute, and we made some important early discoveries. First, more than likely, students come to school with their problems intact. They just don't show up until later, when the work gets hard. Students demonstrate adequate intelligence outside the classroom. It's just inside the classroom they struggle. So we had an interesting epiphany. We don't think learning problems are related much to intelligence. What we do think they're related to is a huge gap between their ability to process concrete information and their ability to process abstract information. Here's what I mean by that. This is concrete information. When the brain encounters this, all the processing is immediate and effortless. Meaning, memory, relationship. The brain doesn't have to struggle, doesn't have to work. This is abstract information. To the student who struggles with abstract, this is just a bunch of squiggly lines with no meaning. There's no cat. Or it might look like this, or this, or this. And these students quickly assume they are lazy, or stupid, or stubborn. And often, so do their teachers. Their brains aren't working effectively, and they don't feel good about themselves. So, how do we tell? Is it this or this? Especially when all the diagnostic tools used to detect student problems and all the intervention methods used to treat those problems are all content-oriented. So we came up with a context-oriented, brain-compatible premise that goes like this. In the structured setting of a classroom, information is received primarily by the eyes and ears. It's then processed through the brain's neural networks. It's then delivered through the motor system, writing, speaking, reading. So we limited our search for new diagnostic tools to these 3 modalities, visual, auditory, and motor. We quickly realized, too bad smell isn't used in the classroom. Think of chocolate chip cookies. Your minds are just bubbling with sensations. That's because for every 1 neuron between your olfactory receptors and the place in the brain that information is processed, there are 10 neurons between your visual receptors and the place in the brain that information is processed. So 10 opportunities for the information to get lost or rerouted or redirected or disappear. So we got our new diagnostic tools together. We tested them on a wide range of students from kindergarten to high school, from special ed to gifted. We got the same results across the board. The students who performed lowest in the classroom also performed lowest on our 3 diagnostic tests. So we hypothesized that the broken part of the brain, like the 3-cent piece of plastic tubing, is the neural networks. They're disorganized, they're incomplete, they're distracted. But by harnessing the brain's innate neuroplasticity through a systematic series of exercises designed to improve these 3 basic processing skills, content then becomes organized and accessible. This is our visual assessment tool. It's called the Bender. It's been around for 80 or 90 years. We bought ours on eBay for 19 bucks. It's used primarily by psychologists. It does exactly what we want it to do, detect visual processing deficiencies. Each of these 9 images is shown to students on a large piece of paper or an overhead projector. They're given as much time as they need to simply copy it on their piece of paper. It's just held there. Nothing tricky, just look at it and copy. And this is why it works. This is the actual first assessment of a 3rd grade student in a gifted classroom. Her name's Mary. She's 8 years old. She's taken the Stanford IQ test. Her score's 164. She is brilliant, but she is struggling, as you can see. Her visual processing is so low. This is below kindergarten. She can barely read. She can't raise her hand and say, teacher, my visual processing skills are low. Can you help me with that? So instead, what does she do? She acts out. That's her signal. She whines, she complains, she's distracting. She's trying to signal that her processing skills are inefficient, the content she's being given doesn't help her, and she needs some other kind of help. We want students to improve their processing skills so information becomes effective. Mary was enrolled in our intervention for 3 months. This is the result. As you can see, her visual processing skills have improved dramatically, as has her academic performance in the classroom and her behavior. She's now focused, she's engaged. Her processing neural pathways are organized and efficient, so the content she processes is now keeping her engaged. She's enjoying what she's learning in the process. So Mary's example, and hundreds like her, told us we were going in the right direction. By improving processing skills through a regular curriculum, not only do we get the result of higher academic performance in the classroom, but also improvement in other skills like memory, focus, and attention. Like any intervention, ours is not a silver bullet, won't treat all the problems. Some students will still need more help, but by improving these 3 basic skills, visual, auditory, and motor, now those other problems can be more easily detected. Our visual exercises are all see and do. They're based on pattern recognition. A student might receive a piece of paper with a grid of dots on it, asked to reproduce a simple pattern. This is often their work, but by repeating these exercises over and over, and by increasing the complexity of the tasks that we're asking them to do, we are stimulating their brains, their neuroplasticity, to grow new neural pathways, to strengthen their pathways, to grow new neural connections. We might increase complexity by asking them to mirror this or do it upside down. We increase complexity in a myriad of ways, and the students really enjoy this kind of work. They can feel their brains working. It makes them feel empowered. I can do this. And when they can do this, they then can learn to tackle content. These exercises help their brains get organized so that they can process information in an effective and efficient manner. Our auditory exercises, like the visual, are hear and do. Teacher might say, a bird uses mud, twigs, and feathers to build a nest. What's the second item I said? So they have to pay attention. They have to listen. When they can process at that level, we add the complexity of memory. Don't give me the answer. I want you to use your memory muscle. I want you to repeat that answer silently in your mind for 5 seconds. We use this little tapping signal. Once they can process at that level, we add another level of complexity, distraction. While they're memorizing, we say, get up and walk around your chair, or go touch the wall. Because every classroom has disruption and distraction. And if students can't maintain their own focus on their own work in the midst of this disruption and distraction in the classroom, their own work will suffer. Our motor skills are all cross-lateral. It's coming up. Our motor skills are all cross-lateral. They work both hemispheres of the brain, and because they work both hemispheres of the brain, they also work the corpus callosum. It's a big band of fibers, the biggest band of fibers in the brain, right in the center of the brain. And this band of fibers passes information from one hemisphere to the other and back again. Our exercises seem simple, skipping, walking a balance beam, but they're not nearly as simple as you might think. And I want you to do one with me. So put whatever's on your lap on the floor. Everyone stand. We're going to do one of our exercises. It's called static balance. We're just going to stand on one leg. The other leg, I want you to just rise very slightly above the ground because you're going to tap your toe when you lose your balance, because we're going to do this for 5 seconds with our eyes closed. So get your balance, close your eyes. Here we go. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. Don't do that. 1005. Okay. See, not so simple. We practice this over and over until our students can stand on one leg without tapping their toe and without wiggling for 20 seconds, both legs. So we keep increasing the complexity of these skills. We asked a group of high school football players to do our motor skills for 15 minutes a day. Many of them were surprised to find out that they could not do these skills in the beginning, but they certainly could do them by the end. Not only did they become better football players, but their reading scores went up by 15%. So we've tested all of our skills. In 2007, we went to a 7th grade special ed classroom. We did an intervention with the students for 6 weeks. We then compared their previous year's standardized scores with their current year's standardized scores, and we found out that cumulatively the classroom improved by 16 points. We then compared that classroom scores to the 5 other special ed middle school classrooms in the district, and we found out their cumulative score went down 2 points. The following year, we did another study in a school. We used 2nd and 3rd graders. The 2nd graders were the ones that got the intervention. The 3rd graders didn't. We used a simple reading test. We had them read for a minute, subtracted the incorrect words, did that 3 different times, took the median score. The first test we gave, sorry. The first initial test we gave them was the blue line, and then after intervention, the red line. So what's really important about this is that all the students in the intervention group improved, some very dramatically, whereas the group that didn't receive the intervention, more like a regular classroom, some students improved, many students remained more or less the same, and a few students actually regressed. This is common. When students' brains are trained and tuned, their ability to process abstract content becomes more efficient and more effective. And this is what we want for all students. So during intervention, we hear reports from parents. The first report we hear is always, no more meltdowns over homework, joy. Second report we hear is not only no more meltdowns over homework, now students are actually doing their homework without being prompted several times. Third report we hear is something like, I told Bobby to go upstairs, brush his teeth, get his pajamas on, and get in bed. I'll be up there in 5 minutes. I have to finish this. And I went upstairs, and miraculously, Bobby had completed all 3 of those tasks without being prompted several times in between, or what used to happen is I'd found him on the stairs and he'd forgotten all of them from the very beginning. The fourth report is our favorite. Oh, I walked by my student's room and there she was, sitting on the bed, reading alone, because now her processing skills have improved so much that she has discovered the most important thing. Learning is fun. This is a comparison that compares the initial diagnostics between a first grade classroom and a juvenile court school, mostly high school kids. As you can see, the motor deficiency level in the first grade classroom is 36%, in the juvenile court school is 80%. The visual level of deficiency in the first grade classroom is 52%, in the juvenile court school is 78%. The auditory level of deficiency in the first grade classroom is 26%, in the juvenile court school it's a whopping 92%. What do people say about these kids? You can't teach them anything. They just won't listen. The truth is, they can't. Their auditory processing is so low, they can't make sense of what's being said to them. And this didn't just happen when they became high school students. It started in the first grade. They couldn't make sense of what was happening in the first grade. And so they started acting out. They started getting unruly. They were distracting. By the third grade, they were being sent to the principal numerous times. By the sixth and seventh grade, they're being expelled. Now their behavior is criminal because they're screaming to the whole world, "Somebody, please help me. I'm drowning in here." And we know this because law enforcement recognizes this direct relationship between quality early education and intervention and how it affects later behaviors and problems. For every $1 invested, it can save $16 down the line. As for those juvenile court students we tested, we actually trained them for 8 weeks. And at the end of the training, we were not able to give their final assessment, but we called their teacher a year later and asked about them. He said, I'll have to check my records, but I don't think any of those students have been back. The normal recidivism rate is 85% for this population. Students who fail to improve year after year have many more problems besides just academics. They have higher rates of dropout, and these dropouts are 8 times more likely to be incarcerated than graduates. They have higher rates of drug, alcohol, and domestic abuse. They also have higher rates of depression, alienation, and anxiety. So, our big idea is we would like to see an intervention like ours, a brain-based, context-oriented intervention, be a part of every kindergarten curriculum. Because when students get their brains tuned up early, processing is effective and efficient, they are immunized against future failure and future problems. And this is because they get to retain their original joy of learning that they came to kindergarten with. So as they retain their original joy of learning, they stay engaged in the learning process throughout not only their academic career, but into adulthood. And so then we end up with a population of problem solvers rather than problem creators. Thank you, and thank you to the TEDx committee.